Hello, it's Paddy from creativemedia.org.uk. I've got a load of rhubarb here, and I want to use that up by making a rhubarb pie. And to make a pie requires pastry, of course. Pies and pasties are a brilliant way of using up leftovers, but the techniques for making pastry always seem very complicated to me. There's all kind of refrigerating this and waiting for that and such like, and lots of tiresome breadcrumbing and getting your fingers all dirty. And my method's quite simple and quite quick, and it always seems to work. So what I'm going to use is some butter. I haven't tried this with margarine, but let me know in the comments and let everyone else know. And of course you need a bowl. I'm using a glass Pyrex bowl, so I'm going to heat this up because I'm going to melt the butter, which is breaking a major rule of pastry making, but if it works, the rule's a bad rule. Obviously rolling pin to roll it out. This is a Teflon covered one, which is quite handy because the pastry doesn't stick to it too well. But I'm also going to try it just using a wine bottle as a roller if you don't have a roller. Plain flour. I might run out of plain flour, so I've got some bread making flour as well to top it up with, just to show that if you've not got the perfect flour, it still will work reasonably. And this is the dish I'm going to actually make it in. And so that's the quantity of pastry I'm going to be making. If I make a bit too much, because anyone who watches my videos knows that I don't tend to measure anything, if I make a bit too much, I'll make a bit of a lid or maybe a kind of lattice over the top. And if I don't make too much, that'll be fine, it'll just be an open top pie. So first, my butter. I'm going to just make a bit of a guess here, and let's go for that much butter. Let's try that. So we've got that much butter into my bowl, and a bit more, I think. So that's too much. It feels like too much. A bit less. That much as well. So that's how much butter I've got. I'm going to use my microwave to melt this, but because microwaves don't like cooking very small amounts, and this isn't very much, I'm going to put in a cup of water in the microwave at the same time. If you don't have a microwave, you could just float this bowl in some hot water to melt the butter, or use a kettle, fill a dish or a bowl with hot water and put this inside it. Don't put the water into here though, because that will make it too watery and your pastry will... It might still work, but you'd have to add tons of flour to mop up all that water. So back in the mo. That has melted far enough. We don't want to actually boil the butter particularly. This is very soft now, so I can just stir it around a little bit and make it into a kind of liquidiness. Don't really want big lumps of butter in there. Right, that'll do. Okay, so this is really a matter of tipping in the flour and getting a sense of when there's enough in there. So I'm going to start tipping it in. That's not going to be enough. See, that's still being like a paste. We don't really want a paste, we want kind of like a crumbly texture, which I'll show you when it's done. It's a good idea not to pour in the whole lot at once. You want to kind of mix it around. This is kind of looking better. A lot of flour making methods tell you to get your hands into it. You end up with pastry dough under your fingernails and stuff like that, which I don't really like. So I like to do it this way. This is looking quite good. I'll put a little bit more in, but that's almost enough. At this stage you might want to add a little bit of sugar if you're doing a sweet pastry. If you're doing a sweet pie, then a bit of sugar is quite nice. And sometimes a little bit of cinnamon is nice, or some other spice to give it a bit of a taste. when I'm doing mince pies, and there's a recipe on this channel for making your own mincemeat, which is great if you can make your own pastry and your own mincemeat. It's cheaper and it's impressive and quite often nicer as well. You can put the things you really like in your mincemeat. And the ones you buy, the mince pies you buy with that horrible fatty crumbly pastry, is really sweet. Ooh, I don't like that at all. So I'm going to put in a little bit of sugar, not too much, just a wee bit. That'll do. Yeah. But I'm going to do the cinnamon as well, because it's a rhubarb pie, it's going to be sweet. Little sprinkle of that. That'll do. You could probably put cocoa in, or grated chocolate. That'd be interesting. I'm not sure how well that would turn out. I've not tried it, but if you do and it works, let me know. Put in a little bit more pastry, not pastry, a little bit more flour. This flour's gone further than I expected. I thought I was going to run out, but you should be ending up with sort of like a slightly yellowy mixture. You can see the flour that isn't mixed in is a lot whiter, and how the rest of this is quite yellow coloured. Just keep stirring it around, make sure there's no big lumps in there. Scrape that off. Mix these bits in too. And when it's ready, it should feel kind of like breadcrumbs feels with the fingers, not too sticky. And you should be able to kind of squeeze it together and it'll stick like that, but it will crumble apart again. So that's about right. Now I'm going to add some water. Again, I'm going to make a little space in the middle. Again, I'm not going to tell you an exact amount. It's really a matter of adding it slowly until it feels right. Just a little bit in the middle. That probably isn't enough. And gradually stir it around and mix in the drier materials from the outside. And if you do put in too much water, you can always add a bit of flour to stop it being so sticky. So as you can see, now it's all clumping together into big clumps, and these big clumps are pastry basically. So that was pretty quick and pretty easy. It's a little bit sticky and pasty. I might have put in a bit too much water even then, but you can see this is, yeah, a little bit sticky. A bit of powdery stuff as well, which I need to kind of mix into the mixture. And add a little bit more flour to this, just to stop it being so sticky. Scrape that off. Right, let's see how that turned out. See, so that isn't sticking to my fingers. That's kind of quite a pleasant texture, I think. It sticks together in a big lump now, a lot better. Now it's got the water in. But it's not sticking all over my fingers, that's just kind of dry flour I can brush off. And if you get a sense that the amount you've got here is not going to be enough to cover your cooking tin, then you could always make a little bit more in the same method I've just made this lump. Just put this by the side and make a bit more. But I think that should be enough. Any crumbly bits I'm just going to put on the table here so I can roll it out on there. some recipes recommend using a sort of cold marble surface. I am actually using this is actually a kitchen floor tile which somebody's getting rid of, and it seemed really ideal for rolling out. It's our kitchen surface now. Obviously it wasn't used as a floor tile before, it's brand new, so we've got it nice and clean. But this is a nice surface, but it's not icy cold, and I've not put this in the fridge or anything complicated. I'm just going to roll it out right now. And I've got my flour on hand because it's going to start sticking to things, so I'll sprinkle a bit of this around to stop it sticking. But we're nearly there. Make sure you've got plenty of space to do this though. Trying to roll in a tiny space when there's stuff in the way is really a pain. And the method I was taught at school is to roll, just do one roll, turn it over, do another roll, not pressing super hard, if you want it to end up roundish at the end. But I never claimed to be very good at this. It's starting to stick, so let's put a bit more flour on top of things. I also put some flour on the rolling pin. But it's holding together quite nicely, it's not all falling apart in my hands. And I promised I'd try this with a wine bottle as well, didn't I? So, let's go and get that and see how well that works. Here's my wine bottle. I've actually filled this with water and put it in the fridge to experiment with the idea that using a cold rolling pin is a good thing. I'll put a bit of flour on that as well, just to stop it sticking. There we go. It's not as big as my rolling pin, so it's a bit harder to roll out the whole width of the thing. I might have to roll out two sides, but it works alright. This is starting to get big enough for my oven dish now, but it has to be actually bigger than the oven dish because it has to go up the sides as well. So the wine bottle works, but it's a bit of a pain if you're not doing pastry very often. You could use a wine bottle, but I think I'll stick with my good old rolling pin. This is probably more than large enough now, I think. There we go. Oop, I've gone off the edge of my table even then. Right, that should be big enough. Just about. Yeah. I might have to stick on some edges to make it fit. This is always the scary bit, that it might fall apart, but the way I've made it, it's actually quite robust. So I can pick it up and drape it over my dish. Lift the sides a bit and make sure it's up the edges in the right way. That's covering quite nicely. If it does rip, you can fix it fairly easily, just by getting a piece of the leftover edges and making it wet and sticking it. I should maybe put a bit of grease or some flour on the bottom of this to stop it sticking. I haven't done that, but I think I'll get away with it probably. And to trim the edges off, the technique I was taught was not to just cut them like that, but to actually put the knife sort of underneath and trim round from underneath a bit. Cut all those edges off. Behind your fingers. Well, that's not bad. It's like a pie. And I've got enough here left over to do some kind of top for it, so I will do some kind of top and I'll roll that out again. But in short, that's pretty much ready to go. What I would recommend is just prodding a few little holes in the bottom and cooking this in the oven. I'd normally advise putting the oven on before you start, but it makes so much noise that you wouldn't be able to hear me talking. So put the oven on before you start making the pastry, and then put this in the oven for maybe 5-10 minutes until it's starting to get a little bit hardened on the bottom, because that gives your pie a better chance of not being all soggy, because whatever you put in is probably going to be slightly damp, especially my rhubarb. My rhubarb's going to be a bit damp. So if I can blind bake, the word is this, it'll harden it off a bit. And if you want to make it really waterproof, get an egg mixture, either egg white or just a whole egg, and sort of slosh this up the sides and across the bottom, paint that all over, and that'll make a kind of waterproof surface, and blind bake it a bit with that egg on. Then that'll make it a lot more crunchy at the end. You won't get the famous soggy bottom that people talk about. I've just finished blind baking my pastry shell. I've also rolled out a piece of pastry, not brilliantly round, to use as my lid. I'm sure I'll make this work somehow. And I'm also cooking the rhubarb that I'm using. Here's blind baking thing, and you can see the edges here have kind of come away from the edges of the tin. And actually, this hasn't stuck. I guess it's the butter, so I can actually take this whole thing out. It's still a bit wobbly, but that's ready to put my filling in, and it shouldn't go too mega soggy. I've got my filling in the pie now. This is rhubarb, so I've cut it up and microwaved it with a lot of sugar, because it just needs to eat sugar. It can be really acidic and sour. I don't know what kind of filling you're going to put in, whether it be hot or cold. Mine's hot at the moment. I think I'm going to get away with that. And I've got my lid, which I'm going to drape over the top. That'll kind of do. Again, I'll trim the edges off like I did before. If you're feeling creative, you can make some decorations for the top of your pie with the leftovers. I'm going to use some of my leftovers just to repair the gaps here. There's a gap there, so I'll just dampen that slightly. This is actually some of the drainings from the rhubarb, so I can dampen that, stick it there roughly. The classic holes in the top to let the steam out. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but it looks right on a pie, doesn't it? And I'm just going to be super lazy and just dump these bits on the top, because I just really can't be bothered to do anything decorative. I just want my pie to be cooked. Yeah. Maybe I can make it into like an artistic... Hey, yes! The symbol of pie on top of a pie. What could be more apt than that? There, stylised pie on a pie. Right, in the oven with that. How long do you cook it for? Well, I just keep going back and checking every now and then. Once this starts to get kind of, brown around the edges, or even slightly black, then you know it's cooked, really. That's pretty much it. It might take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. At 200 degrees, I use 200 degrees for everything, pretty much. 200 degrees centigrade, that's my oven temperature. And there you have it. One pie with a pie on the top. Really easy to make, and it'll last for quite a few meals, so it's quite an efficient bit of cooking. Thanks for watching. Have a look at some of the other recipes on my channel if you want some more ideas about how to cook